people create wealth through his Get Rich branding, which is about all kinds of wealth, because as we know, wealth isn't just about our financial wealth, it's about emotional wealth and time wealth as well. So we had wanted to bring him into the cafe because we knew he would have had so much value to add. But what we even didn't know when we asked him to speak on Force 2 is that his parents had owned a consultancy company, which in previous times had been appointed by the National Economic Development Council to look at best practice and innovation in 50 UK based companies. So he was a perfect speaker for Force 2 around innovation. So what they produced as a result of that was an innovation management toolkit. And although that study was quite a while ago, the principles of it still stand. So we've managed to get Rich here to bring, all his knowledge and understanding of business through all the experience he's got and that innovation and that toolkit tonight. And he's going to teach us it all in 30 minutes, which is amazing. So introducing him to speak on innovation insights, the keys to creating a difference. Let's give a massive, massive Tony Robbins Business Mastery Cafe welcome to Rich Waterman.
Yeah! Let's get rich! It's Rich, everybody! Come on!
The only reason I speak is so I get really great introductions and then lots of applause. So thank you. And also thank you for your kind words in the chat as well. So before I start, I just want to thank a few people, particularly. I want to obviously thank everyone that's put the cafe together, but particularly to Donatella, to Linda, to Louise and to James for kind of guiding me to actually delivering this speech for you. So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you everyone for coming to listen to some words. So I just want to check in with where are you right now? I know where you are, you're on a Zoom with me, right? But just where are you right now? And just take a moment just to pause and breathe and just come to now and know that I'm going to send you all these slides afterwards. So you don't need to write a lot. All you got to do is take in the information and decide what's the one thing you're going to take away and implement after this call, because it'd be a real shame to come on here for half an hour and not do anything with it, right? So just take a moment, just check in with where you're at, whatever you need to do to focus in on what I'm about to say, and then let's unleash some constant strategic innovation. So hopefully I'm going to share the slides. You can all see that okay? Is that right? All good? Yeah, thumbs up. Cool. Right. So I've called this talk Innovation Insights, the keys to creating a difference. It's obviously Force 2, which is constant strategic innovation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for some interaction as I go along. If you've got questions, we'll probably deal with them at the end. And I'm going to punch through this in 30 minutes. There's quite a lot to do. I've tried not to make it content heavy because that's not what Rich Waterman does when he speaks. So let's go for it. Okay. We shall start with a hook. So let's start with some statistics. So there was a survey of executives, and that survey was done by both Accenture and McKinsey. And when the surveying executives, 80% saw that their business model could be disrupted in the near future. 84% considered that innovation was a very key part of future success. And yet only 4% have defined innovation as a strategic priority. So there's a bit of a problem here, something that's very important, but not being addressed. And if you don't like subjective polls, let's look at something else, which is a 2011 Global Innovation Report by Strategy And what they did is they polled a whole load of companies, and from that they said, who do you think are the most innovative companies out there? And they found the top 10. They compared the top 10 innovators to the top 10 research and development spenders. And the innovators, over a 5-year averaged compound growth, had 11% more revenue, which is decent. But more importantly, I thought, was that the top 10 innovators had 22% better EBITDA. Now, for those of you that aren't accountants, EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. You could call it operational profit if you want.
Rich,
so they had
Rich, can I ask you, Rich, can I just say something? I think people are pointing that we're just seeing one stripe of white showing. I don't know if you're sharing the screen with us.
Sorry, guys. Okay, let me stop the share and try again.
Yeah,
Thank you,
just if
Louise.
you want to share, of course. If you're not
Yeah,
sharing,
yeah. I do. Okay, let's try again.
there
Is
we
that
go.
better? Okay, sorry about that. Right. Yes, 80% of people, of executives, thank you for that. It's probably because I moved it over a screen and it bugged on me. So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, 80% of executives saw their current business model being disrupted. 84% believed it was an important part of future success was to innovate, and yet only 4% were focusing on it. 11% higher revenue growth of innovators versus R&D spenders. And I think more critically, 22% higher operating profit among innovators versus R&D. That is massive. That is absolutely massive. So innovation is important. It's often the kind of the ignored child in business. It's like, oh, it's kind of a nice to have. And actually, I think it should be absolutely central to any business you're running, whether you're an employee of a business, whether you're run a very big business, or even if you're a solopreneur, you need to make innovation as part of the key part of what you do. And when we talk about Tony's content, again, the content in Business Mastery is pretty thin. So what you're really going to need to do is go out and look for best practice examples of innovation. One of the things I tried to do today is give you some practical examples about how you can actually use innovation to become more successful. Okay. And please shout out if the slides go weird again. Okay, so what is innovation? There's so many different definitions. I looked around a bit and I really like this definition from Mary Pratt and Emmy McLaughlin from Tech Target. And what I liked about it was that it talks about an organization's process for introducing new ideas, workflows, methodologies, services, and products. So there's a concept here that it's an ongoing thing. It's not a one-off thing. And I also like the fact that it kind of alludes to the fact that it's also an internal process within the business, but also an external facing process because you're offering services and products as well. I think a lot of people, when they think of innovation, probably think about offering new services or products, and that's only part of the picture. Why is it important? So for some of you who don't know me, because I didn't give it in my introduction that I gave to Linda, was that before going into business, I studied pure and applied biology at Oxford University. And one of my heroes was Charles Darwin, who's kind of like the daddy of evolution, really. And this quote, I think, is so accurate. Well, it's certainly accurate from a biological point of view, but it's really accurate from a business point of view as well. So it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most responsive to change. And that's why innovation is so important. So Darwin talks about natural selection. Now, the potted version of natural selection is you had variation within a species, natural variation within a species. And whichever members of those species were naturally best adapted to the environment, they would thrive and survive, and they would reproduce. So the next generation would have more of that particular type of individual within that species. Now, then therefore coined the term survival of the fittest. Those best adapted were the ones that survived. And then what human beings very smart and saw this happening and started to use something called artificial selection. So we started to pick for qualities in crops and livestock. So we'd have high yields in corn and wheat and maize. We'd have livestock with higher meat yields. And so we'd actually deliberately choose certain aspects within a population so we could start to breed all these weird and wonderful domestic animals and plants that we now have. Same applies to businesses, right? So with innovation, what we're doing is deliberately looking for variation in how we could conduct our business, selecting those that we feel will best adapt us to our environment, so therefore we can thrive, make more sales at a lower cost, etc. So we're actually driving business evolution. So that's really what I think innovation is. And one of the best examples I think of this is Tony Robbins. Like, you see Tony, now he's, interestingly, I think throughout the whole of Tony's career, he has adapted and evolved his business model. So he's created different events. He's shortened a lot of events. He's split them into different segments. And more recently, what Tony's done is obviously gone virtual. At one point, I would have said when COVID and lockdown hit, Tony was probably facing a real threat to his business in terms of threat to income while having a lot of naturally having fixed costs. So what Tony did was he looked at what was possible out there. He didn't necessarily invent online seminars, but what he did was he took it and made it best practice and put it on steroids. And now, because he's embraced innovation, his business is probably healthier. In fact, not even probably, his business is multiples more healthier now than it would have been a year ago because he embraced change. So if you asked him now, are you glad lockdown happened? I'm pretty sure he'd say yes, because he's used that to actually innovate his business, and now he's way ahead of the curve in terms of other people in his space, because he's done it amazingly well. So why you should listen to me? Well, you're stuck on a webinar with me talking, of course. I've been doing this for 20 plus years through coaching and consultancy, helping businesses to innovate, but also to find purpose and legacy. Even before that, for a decade before that, I was working in investment banking, head of derivatives structuring, innovating structures. I just didn't know it was called innovation at the time. So I was looking at different elements of financial markets and recombining and putting them together to create value for clients. As Inda said, before me, my parents ran a business called consultancy called Quotech Limited, and they created a thing called the Innovation Management Toolkit, which was something for the UK government. And they won that tender against some big people like Ernst & Young and everything like that. So it's a pretty cool thing to do. You're here, so it'd be sad if you didn't listen to me and turned off, quite frankly. And also, what's the one sentence you need to hear today? And for that, you need to be present. Good? Right, cool. Right, let's move on. What are we going to cover? Well, we're going to cover the 16 innovation mistakes you probably shouldn't repeat. Why have I got 16? Someone's needs to be muted. Why have I got 16? They're the first things I thought of, and it filled 2 slides really well. We're going to look at the 3 key stages to strategic innovation, which is what you'll find in Tony's latest business mastery manual. I'm going to show you a structure that I use in my own businesses and also my clients, to a structure to actually drive innovation, how you can use that. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the importance of culture with regards to innovation, because if you don't get that right, not a lot's going to be happening, if I'm honest. So let's look at the mistakes first. As I go through these mistakes, what I'd love you to do is just to note down on your phone or on a piece of paper which numbers you think apply to you, and then put them in the chat after I've gone through all 16. I will go first and say I have done all 16 mistakes, which is why I put them in there. So see how many of these you can do and still remain in business, thankfully. Okay. Innovation is not invention. Innovation is more like evolution. So it's very rarely something brand new. It's often combining new or new-ish elements to create something newer or evolved in your business. I don't feel like you've got to go around and invent something amazing. It's actually often looking at best practice in your industry or sector and then building that into your business so you're just that little bit better, that little bit more adapted. Now is the best time to start. Do not put off taking action in your business because you feel like you need to innovate first. Innovation is an ongoing process based on feedback from you actually doing stuff in your environment. Sometimes you don't even need to innovate. Sometimes actually what some of you have got a great product already and you just need to go out and do it and test it and see how many people want it. And then you can see if you need to innovate again. Do not put off action for the sake of wanting to innovate. One of my favorite Keith Cunningham quotes, number 4, is don't be a scratch looking for an itch. So be more solution focused. Look out for what problems your clients need. What are their desires? What are their wants? Design solutions, innovate around what you're seeing out there rather than something you think is a really cool idea and then trying to find some poor sucker to go and buy it from you. Okay, that's a big one. This one is a particular favorite of mine, which is I love innovation and innovation loves me, and I call it innovation escape syndrome, where I just indulge in all these shiny pennies and just go off and innovate all the time and forget that I've actually got to run a business as well. So that might be one of those you're doing. So again, write these numbers down as I'm going along. Minor innovation over major work. What that means is don't get obsessed with innovating minor things in your business if there is major work to be done elsewhere. So these are I'm kind of telling you some of the reasons why you shouldn't be innovating, and then you're going to see a whole load of reasons why you should. Definitely not having a structure or culture to innovate is a massive problem, because then you won't be consistent in the innovation process. It just won't stick. You might have some very short-term successes, but not long-term ones. And not preparing your team for change. We all know about Tony's 6 human needs. We all know about how we are fundamentally as human beings quite certainty driven. So you've got to make sure that this process of change, which innovation naturally is, that you're actually preparing yourself and your team for that. So those are the first 8. Just write down quickly what numbers you think apply to you. You can start typing them into the chat bot now if you want. I'm really interested to see what mistakes you've made. It's not a one-off event. Innovation is a process. It is not like, oh, we're in a bit of trouble here, guys. No one wants our products anymore. Let's try some innovation. It should be a continuous built into your company's culture and company structure. You want to be modeling people, not copying them. So by modeling, I mean, you're going to take what someone else is doing really well and then apply the flavor or principle of that to your business. If you're directly copying, you could well be trying to implement something that works really well for someone else but won't work for you. It's also like a bit of a cheeky if you don't give them credit as well, if you copy. So modeling is really important as well. So that might be one that you've done. By the way, just remember, I'm going to give you these slides afterwards. You don't have to write them all down. Not collaborating. Like if you try and innovate in an echo chamber in just your own business, like a small handful of you, maybe just you're not really going to innovate. You need to collaborate. You need to look at outside ideas. You need to look at what other people are doing. You need to embrace new ideas and new possibilities and also be prepared to reject some of them as well. Ownership within your business, within your team of innovation is crucial, because if you're going to drive this change through, everyone's got to get on the bus. So allowing people to take ownership of these innovative projects in your business or allowing yourself to take charge of it is critical, because otherwise, again, you won't implement successfully. And then you've got the 2 extremes. You've got big, stodgy hierarchies, which are companies that are so big, so heavy, so structured, so much paperwork, so much admin that they're not able to innovate. It's just like this oil tanker stuck in the Suez Canal. It's not able to turn anywhere. And then the other extreme would be businesses that are so small, it might be you're a solopreneur, where you don't ever get round to it because you're trying to multitask, you're trying to do all these different tasks, which is really common at the start of a business. But you kind of see innovation as a luxury. That is a massive mistake. Hopefully you set up your business because you saw a need out there, you saw a problem out there and you adapted to it. But don't think that's your only piece of innovation. You must, particularly as a startup, early stage company, you need to really build innovation into your process as you're going along. 2 more, not being willing to run experiments or not being willing to try things out, put them into reality, to act and get feedback. You can't think your way to perfection. That is not recommended. And also not embracing failure. Failure is the breakfast of champions. Okay, if you can learn from failure, I'm going to talk about that more in a second, then you're in a great position to innovate. So those are the final 8. So again, write down which numbers are relevant for you, put them in the chat. I'd love to have a look at those later on when I finish. So 16 mistakes, I've done all of them. All my businesses still survived. I got lucky in a couple of occasions. And I try not to repeat these again, basically. Okay, right, moving on to some Tony Robbins content. So you'll find this in the Business Mastery Manual, and I just want to give you kind of my take on it, and also I'm going to show you how we're kind of going to weave some of these concepts into the rest of the speech and the rest of the structures, because what Tony's got in there, even though innovation's a tiny little bit, is actually really, really high quality stuff. Right. So, yes, this is actually on the wheel questions, right? You don't really want to be first. Sometimes you'll get lucky, come up with something that's amazing, the market wants it, and you become stupidly rich. That's actually incredibly high risk approach as a business. What you want to be is early. You want to see something that's getting traction, seems to be working, like Tony's done really, saw that online seminars are a possibility, saw that they were working and thought, right, okay, how can I do that, but better? And that's what Tony did amazingly well. Pioneers get arrows in their backs. You don't want to be a pioneer. You just want to be early and ahead of the curve. Ensure there are infinite upsides. I love this phrase because it can mean so many things. For me, it is when you're innovating, you're created unlimited possibility. And that's something I love with my coaching clients as well. It's like, what's possible for you right now? And I love it if they don't have a clear answer, because it means they've got so much space to expand into. And that's really where you should be seeing innovation, is your ability to expand your business into places where actually you don't even know how good it could be. I'm wanting to predict that Tony had no idea that the online stuff was going to be as big as it was, but now obviously it is as big as it is. I guarantee you he's now thinking, what next? And interestingly, primary questions, I've got a few actually, funnily enough. One of Tony's primary questions is, how can I make it better? Which is a really, really useful, innovative question, as long as you know when to use it and also when not to use it. How can I make it better? And then there's five key areas for strategic innovation, 5 steps to revitalize a company. Just be careful about that wording, revitalize. That revitalization should be an ongoing process. It shouldn't be, our customers, as businesses starting to tail off a little bit here. We want to be thinking about these 5 things all the time. And again, as I go through them, think about which of these 5 is the most important for you and your business, or the business you work for right now, and put that in the chat box as well. Because I'd really be intrigued as to which one you think is the one you need to focus on. So these are Tony's 5. New voices. So having new voices at the table, new people with new ideas. New questions, better questions, high quality questions for your business. Very, very important. New perspective, that might well come with a new voice, different slants, but you might be saying, okay, new perspectives, how do my customers see this? How do my suppliers see this? How do we see this internally? How do our competitors maybe see this? So new perspective is very interesting. New passions, so people that are excited about areas of your business, energy, putting energy into your business. One thing that is very hard to compete against is passion and energy and purpose. And the final one is new experiments. I'm going to talk about this more in a second. The willingness to run new experiments, take new actions, get feedback, and then adapt your business accordingly. Okay, I guarantee you, Tony ran a lot of experiments before he went live with his current business model. So out of those 5, just pick which one naturally resonates with you, because we're going to come back to this. And then just put that in the chat box. Well, I can't see the chat box at the moment, but I know you're doing it, because I know that you're, as Tony Robbins people, we're highly engaged and highly energetic. So I appreciate your input on this. Good stuff. Right. Why am I getting you to engage? Because you're going to remember more. I'm going to get you to implement one thing at the end of this talk, but I want you to remember this as much as possible without even having to look back at the slides. That's why I'm asking for engagement. That's why every speaker asks for engagement, or should do, not because they're just trying to get you to answer stupid questions. Right. So this bit you won't have seen. This is an innovation structure, and I'm weaving Tony's content into this. This is a structure that I use for myself, not just for innovation, by the way, but I use it with my clients all the time. It's really, really useful for innovation, and it's cool. And the concept is this: being able to run as many experiments as you can, because you want to be able to fail often. You want to be able to make mistakes as often as you can so you can learn from them. You want to be able to fail fast. In other words, you want to be able to get feedback on your experiments as quickly as possible. You want to be able to do what's called fail forward, which is learn from them. Because sometimes we can make a mistake or a failure and we want to kind of distance ourselves from it or move away from it. That's a big mistake. Like all failures in life, whether it's business or not, if you can learn from them, it's actually very, very unlikely you'll revisit them. If you don't learn from your failures, the life or the universe is going to find a way to give you that information again. And probably, remember the old feather brick chuck thing? It will come a bit more intensely each time, okay? Very important in business is fail cheap. Don't make singular massive mistakes, because that could destroy your business in one go. So you want multiple experiments, often, get feedback quickly, learn from them, but fail as cheaply as you can. Try to invest as little money as you are learning to do that, while also running the experiments properly. Some guy called Elon Musk, I found him on the internet, I don't know if you've heard of him. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. Okay, so he embraces failure, and well, SpaceX is a great example, right? He's had multiple failures, but he's learning all the time. Right, I want to talk about OODAs. Some of you will have heard of it, most of you probably haven't. OODAs, I believe, are a concept from the US Air Force, and I think this is one of the best structures I've ever seen in personal development, and I use it all the time, use it with my customers as well. What OODA stands for is observe, and we're going to look through each of these pieces in a second. Observe, and then for my American friends, you would say orient. For the Brits and other Europeans, maybe we'd say orientate, make sense of things. Then make a decision, decide what you're going to do, and then act, and then we loop. So what the Air Force used to do, they would judge the success of military training by how many OODAs they would run through. How many times have you observed, orientated, decided, acted, and then loop back to observe what the outcomes are, and keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. If you can do this in business, I guarantee you're going to have a wildly successful business. You have to embrace OODA loops. So let's look at those OODAs a little bit more. Right, first of all, we need to observe. We need to see what's going on. There's an interactive bit coming up. I'm warning you now. Know what you want to measure and how often. Keith Cunningham would call this dashboard, okay? Write down a few things that you know that you do measure in your business, and maybe some things that maybe you should start measuring. And frequency is really important as well. You don't want to over measure and just spend all your time measuring. And equally, you don't want to under measure and miss things. So type into the chat box things that you measure in your business, or things that you probably should be measuring but maybe haven't started yet. And of course you will tomorrow, just to honor this presentation. Eric Rees, who I'm a big fan of, Lean Startup, he talks about this. Learning what customers really want through observation. So not what they say they want. Sometimes customers will say something they want, and actually they don't really want that, with quality questioning. So you're finding out what they really want as opposed to what they're saying they want, and definitely not what we think they should want. That's a really dangerous thinking process to go down, where you're starting to make assumptions about your customers and your sectors. So work out what you're going to measure, maybe measure some new things, write them in the chat box, because then other people can see what you're measuring and think, oh, that's a good idea, I'll do that for my business too. And we'll think about how often. So that's the measuring bit, that's the observing bit. O for observe. Apologies for going quick. I know sometimes British accents are difficult to get used to, but on a recording you can play at a slower speed, right? So, okay, we're now orientating or orienting, which is making sense of the data, looking for patterns, and then also in the case of innovation, I would then start to be getting my clients to start looking at what possible solutions. And note the word possible. We're not deciding on a solution at this point. We're actually just coming up with some creative ideas. So brainstorming, remember what Tony Robbins said. When we're brainstorming new solutions, new ideas, we want to look at new voices, new questions, new perspectives, new passions, and new experiments. We really want to make sure we're bringing in new influences. So again, think about which of those are really resonating for you when you're brainstorming, okay? A few ideas for me about what I think makes effective brainstorming sessions. I love doing these with particularly with new businesses. Quantity of ideas always beats quality every single time. Have creative environments. Maybe take your team somewhere else. Maybe you go somewhere else. Remember when Tony devised Date with Destiny, he went off to Fiji and was walking around the beach or whatever, right? So have fun, be silly with it. I was talking to James Martin earlier this week about thinking rooms. Like just do something different, because then you'll start to think differently. You start to have different perspectives. Definitely do not edit or judge while you are brainstorming. There are no such thing as bad ideas. Everything is valid. Do not invalidate anyone's idea. You'll see that's important when I talk about culture in a moment. And you want to write everything down. It's really important to have someone that is very good at just capturing data and not influencing data. It can be a bit of a thankless task, but capturing all ideas, and if you need to video it and play it back and capture it afterwards, do that. One of the biggest dangers is if we start to edit too early. So you want to just capture everything that you've done. I'm really good with blank pieces of paper, blank whiteboards, and just go for it. I kind of like that. I find it exciting. There are people with different personalities that find that hell on earth. So you might want to think about, okay, where do we start? Do we want to look at best practice in sector? Maybe you want to look at best practice anywhere as a starting point. Like, oh, we like what these guys are doing. That's kind of a good place to start, okay? You just want to have something to start to hang things off, all right? Tony has got some great questions. I think there's 9 on this slide. Again, I'm going to put the 9 questions up. Pick which one you want to start with this week. Which of Tony's questions do you want to start with this week? This is in the new Business Mastery Manual. Really good questions. Pick one. I'll tell you which one I'm using currently, and then just implement just that one. Okay, then you can focus on it. So Tony's questions are, what business are you really in? If you've been to Business Mastery, you'll know that question very well. Why are you really successful? I love that, focusing on positives. Who is your customer really? So you may have made some assumptions about your customer, like who are they definitely and really? What does your customer really need now in the next 5 years? That's really about where do you need to focus your passions? Where are you gonna? And again, at the end of this slide, I'd love you to put in the number that corresponds to the question that you think is going to be most useful for you right now. Number 5, if you can start your business today from scratch and maximize impact, leverage, and profitability, what would you do? So that is that kind of refreshing question. Hit the reset button. What distribution channels are you not using or maximizing? What technology are you not using or maximizing? What identity do you want people to associate to your business? That's a real who am I or who are we question. I love that question, identity question. And finally is, who do your customer become by doing business with you? I'm about to launch some stuff next month, and that is my current question, is like, what journey are my customers going on with me? So those are the 9 questions. Just have a quick browse down. Again, you're going to get these slides afterwards. Type in the number which you think is probably the best question that you could start off brainstorming with in your business, whether it's a business you're an employee, or whether it's a big business you own, or whether it's a solopreneur. What's the best question out of those 9 that you need to start asking yourself? Tony always says, quality of your life is the quality of questions you ask yourself. So this is so important, and I love this. This wasn't in my business mastery manual. So again, thanks to James Martin for sending me this. It's a really, really good set of questions. Right, moving on. We need to then make a decision. We've observed, we've orientated, made sense, created some solutions. We now need to decide what are we going to go with? What are we going to act on? And I created this tool many years ago because I've got a really mad brain that comes up with loads of different stuff. And I never quite got around to doing any of them. So I'm like, okay, well, I need to find a relatively objective way of making decisions. So I invented this thing called the decision matrix. I've since found out that other people have invented it too, but that's fine because I didn't copy them. This is my thing. And I'll talk about how you can use it and different ways that you can adapt it as well. So really what we're doing here is we're taking that creativity from the brainstorming and we're moving it into implementation, okay? And let me pull it up. Right. So this is a decision matrix grid that I've used with a solopreneur. This is someone who actually created a lot of money in their life, and actually how the business felt was as important to them as business metrics. But the principles are the same. I'll talk you through how you can adapt this. So you put your potential projects from your brainstorming or your potential ideas, experiments in the rows, and then in the columns, you're putting parameters by which you are judging these projects. So in this person's case, they were very emotion-led, very purpose-led. And I said, well, what's important to you? Well, actually, number 1 for them was fun. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. Growth was really important to them. Teamwork was important to them. And actually, profit was as well. Now, what's interesting is, as I developed this thing, this grid was originally projects with the human needs across the top, and I'd tick or cross them. Then I started to add values and other factors in. And then I realized that some were more important than others. So in this person's case, fun is way more important to them because it's got a maximum score of 20. And while flexibility and recognition are important to them, they've only got maximum scores of 8. So they've got relatively lower weightings. The person doing the grid has to decide what's in the columns and what the weighting should be. And you can start to play an experiment, eventually work out what's right for you. If you were more of a, what I call established business, you might be having things like, resources available. It might be speed to profit. It might be medium-term profitability. It might be expense base. It might be need to hire. It might be sort of what I call more traditional business measures. But again, you can weight them if you want to. Process from that point is really simple. You take each project, and I score each of them 1 to 5. I'm scoring them against that maximum score of 20. So project 1, how fun is it? Well, it's an 18 out of 20. Project 2 is a 12 out of 20. Project 3 is an 8 out of 20, and so on and so forth. Really quick, really intuitive scoring. Don't overthink it. Then you move to growth. Maximum score, in this case, 15. Score all 5 projects. Teamwork, do the same. All the way through to recognition, score all them. Funnily enough, add up all the rows and see which one got the highest score, which actually was project 1. That's your top priority. Now, it's where it gets interesting. It's a bit like sometimes, what do you want to do? This thing or that thing, you toss a coin, and when it lands, then you know what you wanted to do. So sometimes what will happen is priority 2, we think, well, I don't want project 2 to be priority 2. It should be priority 1. It doesn't feel right. It's definitely better than the other project. What that means is 1 or 2 things. You've either not got your scoring right, which is unlikely. What you probably need to do is to start to maybe adjust the weightings, or probably even more commonly is you're missing out some columns that are crucial parameters that would enable project 2 to then to leapfrog project 1. So you start to adapt and evolve, innovate, funnily enough, the parameters on your decision matrix. I can send you a spreadsheet for this. It's pretty simple to set up. But over time, your decision matrix becomes higher and higher quality because you understand you and your business better as you go along. You go, yeah, I'm just going to shove these ideas or projects in there, run it through. Project 1, right, I say it's good, I'm doing that one, doing the top priority. That's how it works. One final thing that I've done recently is once I've decided what projects I'm doing, in this case, this person did decide they were going to do all 5, but just order them this way. We just did a bit of a gut check and just added the columns to make sure we were getting decently high scores in fund growth and teamwork particularly, which we did. Funny enough, teamwork scored a bit more than growth. We were just checking that everything this person was doing. Now, I would say 5 projects is quite a lot unless you've got a really good team with you. But even if you're doing 2 or 3 projects, you need to have a check that doing those projects are going to meet the most important things for you. Otherwise, you're going to get fed up. What's the point in doing a business, particularly when you set up yourself, right? That's Decision Matrix. Probably the fastest I've ever taught it. That's good because you're all super smart. Just type into the chat box, what parameters do you think you would use in your business or the business that you work for? What ones would be important to you? Just type them in. I'll tell you why I'm asking you to do that again, is because other people might look at your answer in the chat box and go, holy moly, I've never thought about incorporating fun or love or contribution into my business, and that could be a game changer for them. So if you could all do me a favor and type in, what is it? Is it fun growth? Is it something else that I haven't got on there? What is the thing for you or the things for you that would be really important to measure? Got it? Cool. Moving on. Act, final bit of OODA. We've observed, we've orientated, we've decided, we're now acting. Acting is really important because you can only truly test ideas by doing them. You're then thinking while you're acting, when am I next going to observe? When am I next going to loop around to the start of the OODA loop and start observing again? You need to set a time frame on that. A lot of project management techniques like Agile have a set time period that they're going to act for, and then they'll loop back round again. Johnny Fisher from Idea Drop, basically what he talks about is the fact that investors really want to see what action you've taken. I had the pleasure for many years of working as an independent consultant for Grant Thornton on some government programs like Growth Accelerator and Gateway to Investment. And one of the things that I always said to businesses when I was going through their business plan was, what action have you taken? What have you done so far? Because investors want to see that you've done things, not have thought about or theorized about things. They want to see that you're getting feedback from the environment, i.e. your customers, that what you are doing makes sense to them. And maybe they're even paying you money for it. Okay, so action is absolutely key. Most people on this call, during your day in, day out, week in, week out, me included, you probably overthink and underact. You need to act more and think a bit less. Okay? Right. Part 4, innovation culture. I won't read this out to you because I'm not that sort of presenter, but basically what Jonathan Groves says from Drury University is, often with very well-established companies, that culture just gets ingrained over years, if not decades. And it's actually quite rare for the leader to drive the culture themselves. If it's a very small business or a startup, yes, absolutely, that can be the case. But you have to think of culture as being something that is going to be embraced by your whole team. Some would say workforce. I love the word team better because it's just that concept of being more involved. So culture, I think if there's one game changer with innovation, it's culture. And let me talk a little bit more about that. So there's one structure that I use time and time again that some of you will have heard of as well, which is Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, just talk you through that, about what you need to consider in terms of your culture. There are different sorts of cultures and business structures. So, for example, Apple has a centralized innovation structure. Everything feeds into this sort of centralized area. Johnson & Johnson has more decentralized, so it's each business unit will have an innovation bit attached to it. And then you can have hybrid models like 3M, where you've got business units with innovation, and then they also then feed into a central innovation area as well. There's no right or wrong. There's just positives and negatives for each of these structures, which were pretty obvious in most cases, but you just need to consider what might be right for you. If you're not a very big company, there's no point having lots of segmented innovation. It's just not going to work for you. If you're in a much bigger organization, you do need to think about how you're organizing yourselves. How you communicate is how you will innovate. You'll follow the same structure. Very important to remember that when you're navigating change, you need to start to provide people with quality certainty, give them reassurance about what they're doing makes sense, and really help your team to embrace the concept of if-then thinking. If this happens, then we do this. If that happens, then we could do that. It's to a certain extent contingency planning, but it's kind of more than that. It's flexibility of thought. It's like, this could happen, so if that happened, then this happens, or that could happen. Particularly when you're innovating, you're going to get some unexpected results. You've got to be flexible in terms of how you're going to approach moving towards your outcome. I mentioned this before, focusing on what I call self-actualization of your team, making sure they've got opportunities to develop themselves and promote their own ideas is huge. And you might want to consider more sort of modern structures like holocracies. So Tony talks about Zappos, unbelievable company, unbelievable customer service, really fast moving, really adaptive. Another lady called Kate Lee from Medium talks about holocracies. And she talks about it being a culture of autonomy, so people can express themselves and what they want to do, but with accountability. The sort of early holocracies kind of could drift around a bit and be a bit fuzzy. But now we really understand that, you know what, if you've got really clear outcomes and outputs, allow teams to organize themselves can be extremely successful. It's not for everyone and it's not for every business, but it's probably something to consider. It's very, very big in Germany right now, holocracies. One of my mates, Maurice Otzfeld, who's a senior leader, he's really, really big into holocracy and teal thinking. Right, Lencioni's 5 functions of team. If you've seen it before, I'll give you an innovative take on it. If you haven't seen it before, this will be a game changer for you. This is one of the best pieces of personal development work I've ever seen. So, and it's really important in innovation. So basically what Lencioni approached teams from a perspective, how do things fall apart? How do they not work? So he listed the 5 things that would cause things to fall apart. And he did actually a really lovely little book and story about it. So number one thing where things will fall apart is absence of trust. And so when people don't trust each other, they become invulnerable, they don't share, they don't open up. That's a killer for innovation, complete killer. It's like, you know, I don't feel like you trust me, so I'm not really going to tell you my new ideas because I feel like I'm going to be exposing myself and I'm going to potentially even get punished for it. So you must create a structure where people are encouraged to be open and are rewarded for being openly and powerfully vulnerable. And what comes hand in hand with that is the second layer, which is you want people to actually have healthy discussions where they might not agree with each other. I'd say almost healthy conflict. So the danger is that people just think, I just want to agree with everyone and not stick out. So you have this fear of conflict and you have what's called artificial harmony, where everyone's agreeing, but they don't really agree. So you actually want to have structures where you can healthily debate disagreements with people, because that actually will drive innovation. If you don't have trust and you don't have proper harmony, what you end up with is lack of commitment. Like people are kind of say they're in, but they're not really in. And you tend to have kind of fuzzy outcomes, fuzzy goals, ambiguity. You don't have proper commitment. Where if you have proper trust and proper healthy disagreements, then you get people truly committed, and each those that didn't really agree with the idea will also get on the bus and will also commit as well. That's really powerful team. Coming hand in hand with that again is, if I don't have real commitment, I generally don't have accountability. I don't really feel I need to be kept accountable, and also we'll have this agreement I don't keep you accountable to. So what you get is a spiral downwards towards low standards. So what you need to do is to have proper accountability, proper measurement, proper high standards, and measure them and meet them. And that's the final piece, which is inattention to results. Inattention to results is where the wheels have come off a little bit, and like, do you know what, I'm going to look after myself and my position, status and ego, and I'm not really that fussed about team results. I just want to look good. So the opposite of that is, I'm all about the team. I don't really care how I look. You know, I'm actually prepared to sometimes sacrifice myself for the team because it's that important. So the opposite of all of these is high levels of trust and powerful vulnerability, ability to disagree healthily, high levels of commitment and clarity, high levels of accountability, very high standards, and ultimate commitment to team. If you can do that, you will have a world-class company, because very, very few people do this. I spend a lot of my time now going around to businesses and working with them just on this, because we've very much been a transactional economy for so long. Whereas if you can get this right within your own business and you interact with your customers from that way, you'll create the raving fans, which is of course another force of business mastery, right? if you really want to stand out from your competition, get this bit right, get this slide right. Yeah, I cannot emphasize enough. It's like, this is a game changer. Okay, so that's the importance of getting the culture right. Okay, what we covered? We covered the 16 innovation mistakes that I've made, and I'm sure some of you have as well. We've talked about Tony's 3 key stages to innovation, which is basically be early but not too early, create infinite possibilities, and then make sure you've got new voices, new questions, new perspectives, new passions, and new experiments. I talked about OODAs, the OODA loop: observe, orientate, decide, and act, and how to do that, run as many loops you can. And I finally talked about the importance of culture, and particularly about using Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of teams. That was parts 1 to 4. And breathe. You haven't got a call to action yet, those of you that follow Robin's speaking structures. So at the end of this call, get your diary out, electronic or otherwise, block off innovation time for you and also for your team. Make that a part of your week. Okay? Even if it's just a brief check-in weekly and then something more majorly monthly or quarterly, you need to be doing this often and regularly. That's number 1. Choose one point from this slide. I'll send these slides to the team and they'll pass them on to you. Choose one point I've made and implement that. Just get really, really, really good at that. And as we do with other forces of business mastery, focus on one thing. Get really good at that. Keep repeating that. Choose one thing each week until you exhaust it or you find something better than what I've talked about tonight, which you will do. It's just that, you know, what I've talked about today is more than what's in the business mastery manual. And then here's a little challenge for you, because I'm not part of your leadership team anymore. But how could you continue to apply innovative processes to the ROI leadership team? So some of the things that I've loved recently, I love the fact you brought in masterminds. I love the fact you brought in business mastery masterminds. I love the fact you're doing this. This is phenomenal. Things that really we should have been doing a long time ago. And then there's some seriously bright people on this call, and there's some seriously bright people in the Robbins leadership team, like ridiculous talents. And I do miss you guys. We're going to find ways to hang out. In fact, we're going to talk about that in a minute, aren't we, Donna, about things that people could do. Think about how you could innovate both at events, and that could be whether it's virtual or physical, but also what else could you be doing to innovate outside of events as well. Up for that? Think and get rich. Thank you very much, everyone. Donna, do you want me to talk about the thing, or are you going to do it? I caught her by surprise. I jumped on it.
Rich, as you like it, I can say something, because I am really excited about it. So if you stop sharing the screen, and
I will do that now.
Our faces.
Thank you for that gentle nudge, Donna.
Yes, because you know, Rich as a gift for us all, and I am excited. When he was sharing about it, I was really, are you going to do it? So he's inviting all the Robbins trainers and senior leaders to go and join him in his community that is called Gym of Richness, for free for a month. So if you want any detail or a specification, please send an email to Rich. Rich, if you can please post it.
Yeah, I'll put it in now.
The chat, and enjoy the big heart of this guy. So thank you, Rich, for your offer. Thank you for the added value.
You're very welcome. Like, for me, it's just like, you know what, when I started doing personal development, I wanted somewhere that I could hang out every week. And that's why I've created it. So it's as much for me as it is for everyone else. But yeah, the least I can do is thank my Robbins family, and just email me at richwaterman@richwaterman.com, and I'll be more than happy. We're starting May, and I would love to see as many of you in there as want to.
Thank you one more time.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich, so much. That was so phenomenal. Thank you so much. And I'm just looking at the chat and the messages and the interactions people are giving because of you, instigating that and getting them being interactive is just phenomenal. So once again, from us, the team at BM Cafe, and all the participants here today, we truly from our heart, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us today. Thank you, Rich.
Oh, I really appreciate it. Thank you. It was like it's a brand new talk. I've never done that talk before, and I was excited about it because of who you all are.
Yes. Oh.
So I yeah, you all inspired me to put that together. So thank you for that as well.
And we love being guinea pigs. All right, so we've got a few minutes for shares. Who would like to share what is one key learning that you got from Rich's presentation today? I mean, there were so many, so it's hard to just pick one. But as like Rich said, you know, what is one key thing that you're probably going to take action on? So who'd like to share? I can't see all the hands, so Donna or Nancy.
James Martin has his hand. Oh.
Hey, come on down, James.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Rich. A great overview of innovation. I think going back to those core principles of Robbins on the new voices, the new questions, the new conversations. You know, I've been blessed to be involved in coaching a lot and coaching a lot of senior teams.